Alright, I'm going to be tying a hare's ear nymph, the type that I fish with a lot. Officially, it is a bead-head flashback gold-ribbed hare's ear. I'm using a size 10 nymph hook. Bead-head is already on there, and I'm using gray-brown 110 ultra thread. So I'll start the thread, and then I like to build up sort of an ice cream cone shape behind the bead-head to lock it in. If I were tying several of these at one time, let's say I'm going to sit down and tie a dozen of these, I would go on and fix 12 hooks with the bead-head locked in like this before I even started tying the pattern. So anyway, like I said, looks like a little ice cream cone with a bead at the top, and that just keeps the bead from sliding around. And then I will just wrap back to the bend where I tie the tail in. Sometimes I tie these weighted, but I also like to have a lot that the only weight is the bead head. If I'm fishing shallow mountain streams, I don't want to be hung up on the bottom too much. And if I get to a stretch that's deeper, I can just add a split shot to get it down. The standard recipe for a bead-head hare's ear involves a deer hair tail. You would use the hair stacker to even the tail up, and then tie it in so it extends about half as long as the body. I am going to be using goose biots instead. These are used on a lot of stonefly imitations. I'm going to tie them at an angle from each other, sort of like the tail of a stonefly. The reason I make this modification is that I would like the fly to get down as deep as it can. And deer hair is hollow, and it kind of slows and works against the sinking. And of course, these goose biots are streamlined, and they will get down quick. So I'm going to tie one in. I always, this is just me, it's not a rule, but I tie the one on the other side of the hook in first. So there is the tail on the left side of the hook. Then I'm going to tie the other biot in on the right side. At about that angle. And these things have a convex and a concave side, and I like to tie with the concave down. I just think that gives it more strength and stability. And then I'll just wrap that stuff under, and then the next step is going to be tying in the wire. Usually this is supposed to be gold wire. It is a gold ribbed hare's ear. I like just a little color contrast, so I'm actually going to tie in a little strip of copper wire. Just anchor that in, and then I'm going to go on and move the thread about halfway down the hook to start dubbing the tail. And of course, dubbing wax on the thread make it stick a lot easier. And then I've got two types of dubbing. I've got a fine rabbit dubbing for the abdomen section, and then I've got some hairline hare's ear dubbing. It's a little bit darker, but more importantly, it's got some big guard hairs in there, and it'll bulk up a lot quicker. You want the thorax to be a little thicker than the abdomen. So now I am going to dub the abdomen, and I will start at mid hook, work my way back fairly level, and then as I start to wrap back towards the bead, I will try to give this a tapered look where it tapers up a little thicker towards the bead head. So wrapping the dubbing, once again, starts fairly level. Now I'm going to slowly let it build up. Take a few more wraps in places to make it thicker. And need a little more wax there. There we go. And then a little bit more. Try to build it up a little bit thicker from this point on. And in general, you want it to go to more or less half the hook. Sometimes some people tie it a little more than half, maybe 2/3 of the hook. But remember, now I am trying to bulk it up a little bit. Maybe just a little more on top of that, just a tad. Alright, so we're going to wrap that in. The next step involves wrapping the wire forward. Some people like to counter wrap this. I wrap the same direction as the thread on these. And then notice, since it's a rib, I'm leaving fairly equal amount of space between each wrap. Not always possible to get it exactly even, because it will track inside layers of the dubbing. But so there's the rib, and then I will tie that off. If you wrap it counter to the way the thread goes, tying it off will sometimes actually loosen the wire. Alright, we'll wrap enough to cover that up. And then I'm going to tie in a little section of flashback. Fly shops sell this iridescent paper they call flashback. I probably got this at a party store. Anywhere they sell party supplies, they sell this iridescent paper to be stuffed inside gift bags. And you can get a whole lot more of it for cheaper than you can what passes as flashback in a fly shop. And it serves the same purpose. So I have cut a strip that I'm going to tie in facing backwards, sort of like a tail. So I tie the flashback, sort of serves as a wing case. Now I'm going to dub the thorax a little thicker, and I'm going to use the hairline dubbing that has the guard hairs in it. In my first wrap of dubbing, I'm going to put on there thicker than I normally do, because I am just trying to build it up. Ordinarily, I like to move the dubbing farther up the hook, or sorry, farther up the thread and let it thin out. But I've got this on pretty thick. So then wrap it. Doesn't matter if it's tight or loose, because we're going to be wrapping over it anyway. Alright, now I'm going to tie in some more. This time I will spin it a little tighter and wrap back to the flashback, and then back up to the bead head. So I want this to be a little bit tighter. That first wrap was just to bulk it up. Alright, so we're going to wrap through and back. Now one more to just add a little more bulk in the middle. And it's going to look very buggy with these hairs sticking out in all directions. And as you catch fish on this fly, it comes unraveled even more and gets more buggy looking. This is my go-to fly. If I catch 1,000 fish in a season, probably 750 were caught on this particular Hare's ear. So then I wrap the flashback forward and just tie it in right behind the bead, so that it looks like that. That gives it the name flashback. Then I'm going to trim the excess flashback and then whip finish. I don't put any type of hackle or legs on it. This is the finished fly right here. And like I said, this is my go-to fly. I catch a lot of fish on this, both wild fish and stalkers. So to whip finish, you hook, crook, and pivot. So you have basically the shape of a number 4, and then I'm going to wrap the thread over itself about 5 times right behind the bead. Pop it out, pull out the slack, and all I need to do now is add a little head cement, and I will have a finished, if you want to say the mouthful, we're going to call this a bead-head flashback gold-ribbed hare's ear with biot tail. So if this were a bagel, this would be an everything bagel. You got different colors, you got the buggy dubbing, you got the flashy flashback and the shine of the copper wire, and this is just a fish catching machine. So that is the finalized. When I tell someone what I'm fishing with, I'll tell them this was a bead-head hare's ear.